Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be kind of an overview on the GEC number 14 pattern run here in 2023, and really on the knives that I was able to get from that run. So the number 14 pattern is a small jack. It's one that they have done a few times before. So here is a 2022. They also did them in 2018 and possibly before that also. You can check out greateastern.cutlery.net where they have all of the production totals and different runs of each pattern. But the 14 is a pattern that I was never really particularly in love with. Even though I had owned several of them, I had never kept them. And the reason for that was because they're a pretty small knife. So everybody loves the GEC number 15. It's kind of the most classic, kind of standard size pattern. And you can see here, the 14 is actually a scale model. I believe it's a 70% scale model. So it's 70% the size of the 15. So it is a small knife. The 15 is about 3.5 inches closed. So it's already a medium to smaller size knife. And I'll give you a comparison in size to the 25, which is another small knife. It's one that GEC also did in 2023. This is the Barlow Bearcat club knife for 2023. And you can see here that the 14 is very similar in length, but because the 14 is thinner, it's less tall in the handle and blade, it just feels a lot smaller. And so previous runs, again, I got them, but never really, kept them around. And that is until my friend Rick gave me this knife. And so I put it right in my pocket, put it to use, and found that it's a really capable little knife. So you can put this in your watch pocket, and it does, pretty much any cutting you need. I like to carry a modern knife that's usually larger also, so if I need to do any really big cutting, I can use that. But it really is a capable little knife and is a nice knife. It's a Barlow, which of course I love Barlows. So I came to really like this knife in particular. And so when I saw that they were doing the 14 again here in 2023 and that they were doing Barlows, I decided I was going to try to get some of them. And so I have been having a lot of trouble getting GEC knives lately. I have a couple dealers that I try to reserve with. I'm not always able to. And I try to catch them on drops sometimes and things like that. But I've really not been having a lot of luck on the drops. So a lot of places actually drop these knives, and I missed them before I was able to get the first one, which was this here. So this is actually kind of a special one, or definitely a special one. So this is the Barlow version, but this is the Lick Creek Barlow. So I'm going to show you the tube because it is pretty cool. So this is Lick Creek Traditional Pocket Knives by Lau Fry. And so Lau Fry is a longtime collector and enthusiast, well known for his farmer jacks. He has a great collection and has had GEC make some SFO farmer jacks, but also some Barlows under this Lick Creek brand. And there's a cool history behind the brand itself. First of all, I love this drawing. Really cool. Kind of reminds me of my camp that my dad would take us to growing up. And then here is the write-up. So you can read through that, but basically the handles on this are wormy chestnut. So it just says saw cut chestnut here. The previous knives that were made with this material from Lyle were not saw cut, they were smooth. And I think that the saw cut really elevates it. It really gives it a classic traditional Barlow look and really gives it some texture. But you might have noticed that there, it says the inside story is well inside. They didn't actually put the write-up inside these. They had been inside the ones from previous. So I am going to insert a picture of the write-up from Lyle here, and you can pause it and read over that if you'd like. I think it's really great. And what it is that this chestnut is actually taken from posts that were a property fence line at his, traditional home there. So, or his family home, I guess I should say, family homestead. So that's really, really cool. And that's why it's called wormy chestnut in that write-up, not necessarily on the tube. But that's because there are actual worm trails and worm holes through this. So some people had holes the whole way so that you could see the liner, the brass liner in there. And one person actually had one right on the edge, and they weren't super happy with it. I saw, I think it was John actually, who's also a Barlow Bearcat. You kind of luck of the draw where the worm decided to burrow its hole that there's in there. But mine has some really cool character. You can see a worm hole right here, or a worm trail at the top pin, one down here at the bottom pin, and I also have this dark spot here. I don't know if that's just part of the wood, or there are also nail holes in this chestnut. So it's really cool because at this point it's a rare wood in itself, but then it has that really cool historicity to it from being, the actual wood from posts at, again, Lyle's family homestead. And that's a big part of what I love about these traditional knives is the historicity. And this knife just feels really authentic to me. I love this saw cut chestnut. And as you can see, it is a sheep foot and pen combo. I don't necessarily always prefer two-bladed knives in general, two-bladed jacks where they're both on the same side, but you can access this long pole easily, even with that pen blade there. You can pinch it, and you can access the nail nick well also. Sometimes these nail nicks on the pen blades are hard to access because they sit so low, but that's because you need it to sit low for the tip to not be proud. And actually on this one, neither tip is proud, which I'm very happy with, and there's no blade wrap. And the action on mine is nice. Some people had complaints about the action on these. Mine is nice. It's not super strong, maybe like a 4-ish, but I think on a smaller knife like this, that's not really a problem. So I'm happy with that. Now, one thing you're gonna kind of see throughout this video on this run is that there are some gaps between the covers and the bolsters. Not too bad on this one, but you'll see them on some of the others also here. So it's something that I've been seeing more of on GECs, I think. Definitely something that, that it has happened. I've seen throughout kind of the years of GECs that I have, purchased, the 11 years or whatever. But I do think I've seen more of it this year. So not great, but again, on this one, it's not too bad. And I really love this knife. I think it's super cool. I love the wormy chestnut. The saw cut feels great and looks great. And just one I'm really happy to have. These were pretty low numbers. I believe maybe 27 of them made. And it was kind of like there were leftover parts, and I think they still had the wood from the previous run. So I was really happy that I was able to get one from Lyle, and I think it's a really cool part of my collection because, like I said, I love the history inherent in these knives, but for it to have a direct link to the history of Lyle's family is really, really cool. So then I actually had a reserve come through that I hadn't heard about, so I wasn't sure if I was going to get, and I kind of said like, I'll take whatever you can get me. And I was able to get a purple phlox bone in the gentleman's jack. So this is the non-Barlow version. And what exactly are they calling this here? The autumn peach saw cut bone in the Barlow. And I got these from Ken at Blue Creek Cutlery. So This purple phlox is really cool. I think that this might have been something where they were going for the navy blue bone. They also did a navy blue bone in this gentleman jack, and it just didn't take the same on some of the knives. They even had some that were like half and half. They said both blue and purple on the tube. Those were only sold in the store, I believe, so I didn't get one of them. I didn't make a trip for that, but I was happy to get one of these because I do really like colorful knives, and I like purple. And this is a really beautiful knife. The purple is actually more purple in person than I think it's showing on camera here. This side is more blue, but again, I think that it is showing as more blue than it is. It's more purple in person than it looks on the camera. But it's really beautiful. I love that you can see the grain of the bone in there on both sides. So really a beautiful bone color in my opinion. One thing that I've also seen throughout the history of GEC, but maybe more so recently, is shields having gaps around them filled by glue or sometimes just gaps. This is a really nicely fitted shield. So hopefully you can see that pretty well there. It is fitted very nicely. So I was really impressed and happy with that. No gaps whatsoever. Well centered, nice action, and these Northfield have polished blades, so it does give it a fancier look, and I feel like a lot of care went into this one. Again, no gaps, and no gaps here, which as I mentioned on the first knife, and I'll mention on the last two knives also, unfortunately, those gaps have been relatively common this year in my opinion. So it's great to see that this Northfield, the fancier, doesn't have those gaps. But this one does have a proud tip. So I can catch my finger pretty easily on that. I think you can actually see in camera that it's proud. So that's unfortunate. Now, not a huge deal if it's not gonna be a user, probably not a huge deal in general from a practical standpoint, but I don't think that a sheepfoot blade in a regular jack handle like this needs to be proud. Now, of course, they want to have the back springs flush, which they are very nicely flush. But I'd love to see that sheepfoot, fit into the blade well a little deeper, because why not, right? You've got a lot of space. The blade doesn't have a belly. So I do wish that the tip wasn't proud, but otherwise, that's a really, really beautiful knife. Moving on, this is the other one that I got in that reservation. This is the saw cut bone, and this is a really classic saw cut bone color. It's a little darker than the previous years. I think that this was called goldenrod. Not 100% sure on that, but I think it was goldenrod. And this is again autumn peach saw cut bone. So a little darker and really a classic. Sorry about that. Got to get a more stable setup here. But a really classic look for a Barlow. You really can't beat saw cut bone on a Barlow, and I think it looks great. Now, one person in the Barlow Bearcat Club mentioned that they thought that this was a crack, and I can see that there, but I really don't think it's a crack. I think that's a stable part of the bone, but you can kind of see the grain of it there. I don't think that I can really catch my fingernail on it or anything like that. But that's something, that I didn't notice right away, actually. Someone pointed it out. But this does have relatively, easily visible, significant, I guess I would say, gaps here between the covers and the bolsters. So, not great, not super fortunate. Again, I think it is more common recently. Now, it does happen, like, for example, this 15 that I've carried and used a whole lot has those gaps, but then again, I've boiled this bone a couple times. So, bone does shrink, and it is what it is. I'd love it if they didn't have the gaps, but has been something I've seen relatively common this year. This one doesn't have proud tips, so I do love that, and again, has nice action. This one is pretty light. I would call this one maybe a 3.5 to a 4, 3 to 4 on the action, but on the pull, but the action's nice. So you know, it definitely snaps closed. So this one I think was the easiest to get of the run, from what I could tell from what other people said, and so, you know, kind of the most common of them, but also a really classic Barlow. Speaking of classic Barlows, the next one I really didn't think I was going to get, because it seemed like it was one of the harder of the bunch to get, and it is this black saw cut Delin. And now it's interesting that this is one of the harder ones to get, because we don't know how many they made of each of these. We won't know till, I guess, when the production totals come out at the beginning of next year. But this is a synthetic, so it's the only synthetic of these. But saw cut synthetic, whatever type of synthetic, plastic, celluloid, whatever, is actually a really traditional handle material for a Barlow. So I really like that. That's, again, a connection to history. Barlows historically, you know, were often very inexpensive knives, and having this synthetic handle kind of goes right along with that. So I do love it, and I think that the saw cut looks great. It really takes this saw cut nicely. You can feel it, but it's not overly kind of textured. You see the saw cuts really, really well. I really think that this is one of the better looking of them. Now, again, unfortunately, there are some gaps, less so on this one than on the Autumn Peach saw cut bone, but there are some small gaps there. Probably the least gaps on this one, then second least on this one, third least on this one, and then the most on this one. So, you know, again, wish those gaps weren't there, but it is what it is. The tip is not proud on this one. The pen tip is a little close to proud for me, but you can still easily access that long pull. And this one has a little bit stronger pull, like the earlier one here. Maybe more like a 4 than a 3. The action on this, I haven't put oil in this one yet. I have put oil in these ones. So I think it'll get a little snappier, but the pen blade is not quite as snappy as the sheep foot on this one. But I think it's a really classic knife. I love the look of it. I would particularly love it if it was a single blade. I do prefer single blade, and it would go really nicely with this number 15 single blade sheep foot that was my first GEC, and I dyed the bone black. So, you know, might be a good candidate for a blade delete or something like that. But I think that these are really cool. I'm happy to have gotten some of them. Like I said, I've had a lot of trouble recently getting GEC knives, so I was surprised that I got all of these, to be honest. I thought as the drops were happening, I was kind of missing them, but I was happy to, and I don't know if I need 4 more 14s in my collection, but I'm happy to have gotten them and gotten to check them out and to share them with you. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. You can check out knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like these and knife related topics. Oh, I wanted to mention this one was from JSR Sports and More. So make sure you subscribe to the channel here, click the bell and select all so you know when I post new videos. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.